For 16 years, one name has stood for calm under impossible pressure. Captain Chesley Sully Sullenberger became the pilot who safely landed a powerless airliner on the Hudson River, turning what should have been a terrible tragedy into one of the greatest survival stories in aviation history. He never chased fame. Instead, he spent years using that moment to make flying safer for everyone. But now, at 75 years old, he has stepped forward with a very different message. He is not asking for praise. He is asking for understanding. And the reason why has touched millions. But what led this remarkable man to this moment? Long before the world knew his name, Sully was just a quiet boy growing up in Denison, Texas. His family valued hard work, discipline, and humility. Those lessons shaped him from an early age. While other children played games, he spent hours building model aircraft and dreaming about flight. Military jets from a nearby Air Force base often flew overhead, and each one fueled his growing fascination with the skies. But there was something else that made him stand out. He excelled in school, ranking near the top in almost every subject. By the age of 11, his scores were high enough to qualify him for Mensa. Yet intelligence alone would never define him. What happened next would reveal an even greater gift. As a teenager, Sully was already chasing his dream. He earned a glider license at just 14 years old and learned to fly powered aircraft by 16. His dedication earned him a place at the United States Air Force Academy, where he quickly impressed instructors with both his skill and discipline. Before long, he was teaching fellow cadets to fly, an honor rarely given to someone so young. He graduated as the Academy's top pilot, receiving its highest award for airmanship. But flying was only part of his education. Why would studying human behavior become just as important? After graduation, Sully completed a master's degree in industrial and organizational psychology at Purdue University. He wanted to understand how people think, communicate, and make decisions under pressure. Those lessons would later prove invaluable. He then trained on military aircraft before moving into the powerful F-4 Phantom II fighter jet, serving in England and Nevada. Along the way, he also joined aircraft accident investigation teams, carefully studying what causes disasters and how they can be prevented. Every experience added another piece to the puzzle. At the time, no one could have guessed just how important those lessons would become. In 1980, Sully left active military service and began a new career with the airline industry. Over the next 3 decades, he logged tens of thousands of flight hours. But he did far more than fly passengers from one city to another. He became a flight instructor, worked with the National Transportation Safety Board, and helped develop crew resource management training, teaching pilots and cabin crews how to work together during emergencies. He also advised on safety procedures that airlines still use today. Behind the calm voice passengers heard over the intercom was a man who had spent his entire career preparing for the worst. Then, one ordinary January afternoon, everything he had learned would be put to the ultimate test. On January 15, 2009, U.S. Airways Flight 1549 lifted off from New York's LaGuardia Airport bound for Charlotte. Barely 2 minutes later, disaster struck. The Airbus A320 flew into a flock of Canada geese, and both engines failed almost instantly. In seconds, the aircraft became a giant glider with no power, drifting over one of the most crowded cities in the world. Air traffic controllers suggested returning to LaGuardia or heading for another airport nearby. But Sully quickly realized neither runway could be reached safely. So he made a decision that stunned everyone listening. Could landing on a freezing river really save every life on board? With only moments to act, Sully aimed the aircraft towards the Hudson River. Inside the cockpit, there was no time for panic. Every decision had to be made with absolute precision. Later, he admitted the silence after the engines failed was one of the most frightening sounds he had ever heard. Yet his voice never reflected that fear. The landing was so controlled that the aircraft remained largely intact as it settled onto the water. Rescue boats rushed towards the scene within minutes, allowing every one of the 155 passengers and crew to escape alive. But Sully was not finished yet. Before leaving the aircraft, he walked through the cabin twice, making absolutely certain no one had been left behind. Only after checking every row did he become the final person to step off the sinking plane. Investigators later concluded that his decision to land on the river had been the only realistic option. Trying to reach an airport would likely have ended in catastrophe. The world quickly celebrated him as a hero, but behind the headlines was a very different reality. What did success really cost him? Although people praised his calmness, Sully later revealed that he struggled deeply after the accident. He experienced sleepless nights, recurring flashbacks, and symptoms similar to post-traumatic stress. The weight of what almost happened stayed with him long after the cameras disappeared. Even so, recognition poured in. President George W. Bush personally thanked him. President-elect Barack Obama invited the crew to his inauguration. New York honored him with the key to the city. Time magazine named him one of the world's most influential people. Yet despite the applause, Sully never believed the story belonged to him alone. He repeatedly reminded people that the rescue depended on many others. Ferry captains, tugboat crews, first responders, flight attendants, and his first officer Jeffrey Skiles all played essential roles. Without their quick actions, the outcome might have been very different. Today, the aircraft itself is displayed at the Sullenberger Aviation Museum in Charlotte, preserving the story for future generations. But Sully had no interest in becoming a celebrity. Instead, he asked himself a simple question. How could this experience make aviation safer? Rather than fading from public view, he turned his unexpected fame into a second career focused on education and public service. He retired from commercial flying in 2010 after 30 years, completing one final flight alongside Skiles and several passengers from Flight 1549. France honored him with the Legion of Honor, and he became Grand Marshal of the Tournament of Roses Parade. He also published his best-selling memoir, Highest Duty, which explored not only the Hudson landing but also deeply personal struggles, including the loss of his father to suicide. His honesty encouraged important conversations about mental health. But his story was far from over. In 2016, Clint Eastwood brought Sully's story to cinemas, with Tom Hanks portraying the captain in the film Sully. The movie introduced millions of younger viewers to an event they had only heard about in passing. Meanwhile, Sully continued speaking around the world about leadership, teamwork, and making decisions under extreme pressure. He became CBS News aviation safety analyst, explaining major air accidents with clarity and compassion. His calm approach earned enormous public trust. Yet he was never afraid to challenge powerful organizations when safety was at risk. After the Boeing 737 MAX tragedies, Sully openly criticized both the aircraft manufacturer and federal regulators. He argued that failures in design and oversight should never have been allowed to happen. He testified before Congress, urging stronger safety standards and greater accountability. His lifelong commitment to protecting passengers eventually led President Joe Biden to nominate him as the United States ambassador to the International Civil Aviation Organization. Confirmed by the Senate, Sully spent 2022 helping shape aviation safety on a global scale. Through every chapter, one quality remained unchanged. Service always came first. But now life was preparing one final challenge. Away from public life, Sully enjoyed a quiet home with his wife, Lori Henry, whom he married in 1989. Together they raised their adopted daughters, Kate and Kelly, in Danville, California. Friends often said the famous pilot who calmly handled emergencies spent most evenings focused on ordinary family life. Homework, dinner, conversations around the table. Those simple routines mattered more to him than public recognition. Then came the announcement that changed everything. This week, Sully revealed that he had been diagnosed with early-stage Alzheimer's disease after noticing subtle changes in his memory. He found himself forgetting names, repeating stories, and experiencing disrupted sleep. Rather than hiding the diagnosis, he chose complete honesty. He explained that he was working closely with Dr. Gil Rabinavasai at UCSF Medical Center and described himself as being only at the beginning of a long journey. His words carried the same calm tone the world remembered from the Hudson River. But why speak publicly now? Sully said he hopes his openness will help other families facing Alzheimer's feel less alone. For years, he often said that courage could be contagious. Now he believes that same courage means facing illness openly instead of suffering in silence. His wife Lori shared that he remains the same steady person he has always been, and that the family intends to keep finding joy in everyday life despite the uncertainty ahead. While there is still no cure for Alzheimer's, earlier diagnosis and newer treatments offer more hope than ever before. Sully wants people to know that life does not simply end with a diagnosis. Those who have followed his career recognize a familiar pattern. He has never hidden life's hardest moments. He spoke honestly about his emotional struggles after Flight 1549. He spoke openly about the grief following his father's death. Now he is doing the same with Alzheimer's. Once again, he is choosing clarity over silence. Experts say public figures who speak openly about early diagnosis help reduce fear and stigma for millions of families. In many ways, this may become one of Sully's most important acts of service. For a man remembered for one extraordinary afternoon on the Hudson River, this latest chapter feels less like an ending and more like a continuation of everything he has always believed. Whether guiding a powerless aircraft, improving aviation safety, advising world leaders, or sharing deeply personal news, he has consistently placed others before himself. His daughters, Kate and Kelly, have rallied around him, just as his family always has during difficult times. And just as he once walked through a sinking aircraft twice to make sure every passenger was safe before thinking of himself, he is once again choosing to lead by example. The years ahead may be uncertain, but one thing has never changed. Chesley Sullenberger's greatest strength was never simply his ability to fly. It was his willingness to face difficult moments with honesty, discipline, and compassion. From a quiet boy building model planes in Texas to a fighter pilot, airline captain, safety advocate, ambassador, and now a voice for those living with Alzheimer's, every chapter tells the same story. True courage is not measured by a single heroic moment. It is revealed by how someone continues to serve others, even when facing their own greatest challenges. And perhaps that is the legacy Captain Sully will be remembered for most.